The pirate made a compassionate face and whispered, "I understand this very minute," and beckoned to a waiter. A quarter of an hour later, Riakin sat in complete solitude, hunched over his bream, drinking glass after glass, understanding and recognizing that it was no longer possible to set anything right in his life, that it was only possible to forget. The poet had wasted his night while others were feasting and now understood that it was impossible to get it back. One needed only to raise one's head from the lamp to the sky to understand that the night was irretrievably lost. Waiters were hurriedly tearing the tablecloths from the tables. The cat slinking around the veranda had a morning look. Day irresistibly heaved itself upon the poet. Chapter 7. A Naughty Apartment. If Styopa Likodayev had been told the next morning, "Styopa, you'll be shot if you don't get up this minute," Styopa would have replied in a languid, barely audible voice. "Shoot me, do what you like with me, I won't get up." Not only not get up, it seemed to him that he could not open his eyes, because if he were to do so, there would be a flash of lightning, and his head would at once be blown to pieces. A heavy bell was booming in that head, brown spots rimmed with fiery green floated between his eyeballs and his closed eyelids, and to crown it all he was nauseous, this nausea, as it seemed to him, being connected with the sounds of some importunate gramophone. Styopa tried to recall something, but only one thing would get recalled, that yesterday, apparently, and in some unknown place, he had stood with a napkin in his hand and tried to kiss some lady, promising her that the next day, and exactly at noon, he would come to visit her. The lady had declined, saying, "No, no, I won't be home," but Styopa had stubbornly insisted. "And I'll just up and come anyway." Who the lady was, and what time it was now, what day, of what month, Styopa decidedly did not know, and, worst of all, he could not figure out where he was. He attempted to learn this last at least, and to that end unstuck the stuck-together lids of his left eye. Something gleamed dully in the semi-darkness. Styopa finally recognized the pier glass and realized that he was lying on his back in his own bed, that is, the jeweler's wife's former bed, in the bedroom. Here he felt such a throbbing in his head that he closed his eyes and moaned. Let us explain, Styopa Likodayev, director of the Variety Theatre, had come to his senses that morning at home, in the very apartment which he shared with the late Berlioz, in a big, six-storied, U-shaped building on Sadovaya Street. It must be said that this apartment, number 50, had long had, if not a bad, at least a strange reputation. Two years ago it had still belonged to the widow of the jeweler de Fougères. Anna Francevna de Fougères, a respectable and very practical 50-year-old woman, let out 3 of the 5 rooms to lodgers, one whose last name was apparently Belumet, and another with a lost last name. And then 2 years ago inexplicable events began to occur in this apartment. People began to disappear from this apartment without a trace. Once, on a day off, a policeman came to the apartment, called the second lodger, the one whose last name got lost, out to the front hall, and said he was invited to come to the police station for a minute to put his signature to something. The lodger told Anfisa, Anna Francevna's long-time and devoted housekeeper, to say, in case he received any telephone calls, that he would be back in 10 minutes, and left together with the proper, white-gloved policeman. He not only did not come back in 10 minutes, but never came back at all. The most surprising thing was that the policeman evidently vanished along with him. The pious, or, to speak more frankly, superstitious Anfisa declared outright to the very upset Anna Francevna that it was sorcery and that she knew perfectly well who had stolen both the lodger and the policeman, only she did not wish to talk about it towards night time. Well, but with sorcery, as everyone knows, once it starts, there's no stopping it. The second lodger is remembered to have disappeared on a Monday, and that Wednesday Belumet seemed to drop from sight, though, true, under different circumstances. In the morning a car came, as usual, to take him to work, and it did take him to work, but it did not bring anyone back or come again itself. Madame Belumet's grief and horror defied description. But, alas, neither the one nor the other continued for long. That same night, on returning with Anfisa from her dacha, which Anna Francevna had hurried off to for some reason, she did not find the wife of Citizen Belumet in the apartment. and not only that, the doors of the 2 rooms occupied by the beloved couple turned out to be sealed. Two days passed somehow. On the 3rd day, Anna Francevna, who had suffered all the while from insomnia, again left hurriedly for her dacha. Needless to say, she never came back. Left alone, Anfisa, having wept her fill, went to sleep past 1 o'clock in the morning. What happened to her after that is not known, but lodgers in other apartments told of hearing some sort of knocking all night in number 50 and of seeing electric light burning in the windows till morning. In the morning it turned out that there was also no Anfisa. For a long time all sorts of legends were repeated in the house about these disappearances and about the accursed apartment, such as, for instance, that this dry and pious little Anfisa had supposedly carried on her dried-up breast, in a suede bag, 25 big diamonds belonging to Anna Francevna. That in the woodshed of that very dacha to which Anna Francevna had gone so hurriedly, there supposedly turned up, of themselves, some inestimable treasures in the form of those same diamonds, plus some gold coins of Tsarist minting and so on, in the same vein. Well, what we don't know, we can't vouch for. However it may have been, the apartment stood empty and sealed for only a week. Then the late Berlioz moved in with his wife, and this same Styopa, also with his wife. It was perfectly natural that, as soon as they got into the malignant apartment, devil knows what started happening with them as well. Namely, within the space of a month both wives vanished. But these two not without a trace. Of Berlioz's wife it was told that she had supposedly been seen in Kharkov with some ballet master, while Styopa's wife allegedly turned up on Boshidanka Street, where Wagging Tongue said the director of the Variety, using his innumerable acquaintances, had contrived to get her a room, but on the one condition that she never show her face on Sadovaya. And so, Styopa moaned. He wanted to call the housekeeper Grunya and ask her for aspirin, but was still able to realize that it was foolish, and that Grunya, of course, had no aspirin. He tried to call Berlioz for help, groaned twice. Misha Misha, but, as you will understand, received no reply. The apartment was perfectly silent. Moving his toes, Styopa realized that he was lying there in his socks, passed his trembling hand down his hip to determine whether he had his trousers on or not, but failed.